thanks. Like, hey, Scoob, did you hear Nikki Blake is hosting a Scooby-Doo panel? No. Yeah. Like on today's Scooby-Doo episode, Scooby-Doo and Shaggy meet Nikki Blake. Yeah, and a Scooby Panel. Like, we need to get this puppy started. Okay, Nikki Blake, take it away, Scooby-Doo.
Welcome to the Scooby Panel. I'm your host, Nikki Blake from ScoobyAddicts.com, and today we are talking about Professor Pericles from Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated. Before we begin, I'll have everyone introduce themselves, and Joel, will start with you.
Hi there, I'm Joel from the YouTube channel Planet Scooby.
Trevor?
My name is Trevor Hawkins, and I have a page on Instagram that has a ton of Scooby art, Funky Philosophy Fridays on Instagram.
And Mark?
Hi everyone, I'm Mark and I run Scooby and Mark on Facebook.
I'm excited to have you guys here. We're talking about Professor Pericles, and it's going to be an interesting conversation, I think, especially since I never sent you guys the topics.
Oh my.
So I'm just going to read my bio that I wrote of Professor Pericles, and then we'll get into the discussion. So Professor Pericles is a parrot that looks like he's been through some things. He looks rough. He looks really rough, like he's had a pretty tough life. He's a genius with a cashew-sized brain. He was originally the pet of Abigail Gluck, whom he met in the 30s. He took over her underwater robot factory when she died. He met Ricky Owens when he flew into a tree in his yard while he was playing with a truck. Ricky nursed Pericles back to health, and when Ricky tried to set him free, he decided to stay and be his pet. Pericles was part of the original Mystery Inc. gang in Crystal Cove. He was like the Scooby-Doo of the gang and was best friends with Ricky Owens, until he betrayed them to get the planispheric disc. Mayor Jones and Pericles teamed up to get the discs, but then Mayor Jones betrayed Pericles. Pericles got the scar on his left eye when the mayor threw him on the ground after giving him an inhalant and making him pass out. Pericles was then sentenced to life in the Crystal Cove Animal Asylum for the criminally insane. Pericles escaped, and he was on a mission to gain ultimate power by recovering all 6 pieces of the planispheric disc. Pericles used the original Mystery Inc. crew and the Scooby Gang to gain ultimate power and to take over Crystal Cove and the world. Pericles was voiced by German actor Udo Kier, and he appeared in 21 episodes of Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated. It almost sounds odd to say all these things because it's so weird from what we're used to in Scooby-Doo. You know, taking over the world, and he just did some really crazy stuff. So what are your general thoughts on Professor Pericles? Joel?
Yeah, I think he's pretty cool. He's kind of woven into the grand scheme of things. So he's not usually like a villain of the week. He's more just last 30 seconds. He pops in, does his thing, disappears. And I kind of like that, you know, when we watch classic Scooby-Doo, sometimes we kind of wish these villains would come back. Like, you know, in another episode, so we get a little bit more of them, but that never happened. Of course, be careful what you wish for. If they did that, it would probably not be good. But it works with Professor Pericles because they're building up like a grand, like every episode, it's its own thing, but it's also building up towards something, which was, I imagine, really difficult to do. And the bird himself, like, it's my difficult thing I have with him is I usually think he's an owl, but he's a parrot. But yeah, he looks cool. I like the voice actor a lot, so I was really thrilled to have him voice act the parrot. And yeah, I'll shut up now.
Trevor, what are your general thoughts on Professor Pericles?
I liked him. I mean, he's the kind of the villain that you love to hate. It's this, in the old terms of Hollywood, the scenery chewing actor. It's like, rah, rah, rah. You know, every time he appeared, it's like you weren't quite sure what he was going to do next. And but it was strangely engaging. It was really interesting about him having this definite nationality, and I have a thought or two about that, but I'm going to share that later.
Mark, what are your general thoughts on Pericles?
So, I have to agree with Joel. I think he's cool, but then I'm also like, I think more of like, no, you're causing problems. So it makes me in some ways not like him. And, in some of the ways done things and said things. But it's I guess like every show has an antagonist, and that's just very, you know, no one's going to like that person for the most part. So, I really I like the drawings and things they done with him and how they made him look very. I mean, this wasn't just like for a kid. I mean, he has a scar on his face, and there's all these things that set him aside from just a normal parrot.
I do agree, Joel, that he does look sort of like an owl.
Right.
Yeah. I personally am not a big fan of birds, so that was one strike against him. He also seemed to be helping the gang at first, but he was just using Scooby especially to steal stuff from different places in Crystal Cove. And then, Scooby was stealing some things, but then he was stealing the things he actually needed. And so I kind of had some anger towards him because he was using Scooby. And he was able to do these really crazy things. Like he could get out of a straitjacket and out of a cage, a glass cage, and out of a prison. And I don't even remember if we know how he did that. But for a little bird, he had way too much control over people. And I feel like that would not have been possible. I mean, was he like supposed to be a magic bird that he was able to duct tape a taser to the guard in the prison while he was in his cell in a straitjacket? Like, was that the vibe that we were supposed to get, that he was some kind of magic bird?
Given about his Anunnaki connections at the end, I mean, that kind of would play in for me. I feel like if he was a descendant of one of those kinds of creatures, he might have some kind of psychic powers or some ability to control people. So, I mean, of course, that wasn't explained to begin with, so who knows? But in terms of the whole scope of the things, it's kind of like not too surprising for me.
I kind of interpreted him like Sherlock Holmes, Moriarty, like just always 3 steps ahead, kind of, and just kind of having a plan B. And I also got like Hannibal Lecter vibes off of him. So I don't really consider him magic. I just think he's just moving the plot along, and he's just super smart, and he's kind of showing people what they want to see, but probably doing something in the background that makes it look magic.
Yeah.
Misdirection.
Yeah, that's possible. So what did you think of his voice? Joel, I know you said you liked it, but did you want to elaborate any more on that?
I can't. The voice I liked a lot because I'm used to that actor. So I guess I was biased towards the voice, but I liked it. I always understood what he was saying.
Trevor?
I liked it. I mean, it just played on these really old tropes, and usually in Hollywood now, like one of the few things everyone can agree on are that Nazis are bad. So anytime you can throw that kind of like really awesome German accent around and just give a really evil vibe to it, it plays well and it's easy. It kind of reminded me too. I kind of wondered, that Mystery Inc. kind of borrowed from a lot of things over the course of Scooby history, but I'm wondering if Phineas 5 was kind of an inspiration from Shaggy and Scooby-Doo get a clue. I mean, I went back and looked, and even in the face shape and kind of the eye shape and the accent and just that kind of, I'm brilliant, I am desperate, worship me, and I'm diabolical. So I feel like that kind of maybe paved the way for him as well.
Yeah, that is a really good connection.
Also remind me a little bit of Colonel Klink from Hogan's Heroes. You know, if you're old enough to remember.
Yeah. Mark, what did you think of Professor Pericles' voice?
I actually really liked it. For me, it gave a lot of vibes towards like, the generic Scooby Doo. That this is meant to be slightly scary. I really really liked that, and I liked how they gave him his choice of words was very well thought out when planning.
Yeah, he was written really well, that's for sure. And the accent went really well with the evilness of his character. So it was definitely a good choice of voice actor. So Professor Pericles tried to kill the gang, and it was implied that he killed other characters like Cassidy and Marcy. He slapped people. He used fear of hurting loved ones to get people to do what he wanted. He's super smart, so he could come up with crazy, devious plans. And I'd say he was probably one of the scariest villains, though I do think most of the villains in Mystery Inc. were pretty terrifying. How would you rank him as a villain, Joel?
That's a tough one. Like within the series or within the whole Scooby timeline?
However you want to rank him.
Within the series,
Like, would you rank basically, like, do you feel like he was scary? Do you feel like he wasn't so scary? Like,
I'm kind of leaning towards not so scary, just with what Trevor said, just chewing the scenery. Like I kind of see it as that. I don't know if I'm really explaining myself very well, but I enjoyed how he was chewing up the scenery. It was a great role. I just see it more as like Freddy Krueger. Like I don't see him as a scary villain. He's what makes those Nightmare on Elm Street movies. Hannibal Lecter, kind of like I like Silence of the Lambs because of Hannibal Lecter. Ton of other great actors in there, but he's just hamming it up, sort of. So I don't see him as particularly scary. But what you said, when you look at it, all these bad things these people do, it is terrifying compared to Charlie the Robot, right? Or what have you. But yeah, if you're looking at it as what you said, yeah, pretty scary. I'd put him. There's some scary villains in the classic Scooby-Doo, like the Snow Ghost who puts Velma on the log and all that. That's kind of freaky.
Mhm.
Yeah, for scariness, if we're going up by what he's actually doing, he's a 10 out of 10.
Trevor, how would you rank him as a villain?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Joel on that. I mean, just what he did to Cassidy, what he was willing to do, what he did to Miss Ricky's Mystery's henchman, killed him, putting the venom in the spine and all that stuff. Not cool. I mean, it wasn't just bad things done to hurriedly push himself along. He was savoring every moment of this. And he had a lot of time to think about it. So, yeah, it's like one thing about the original crew. It's like a lot of the villains were wholesome. To have wholesome villains, it's like, and when you turn around and think about it, it's like, yeah, even the villains had a code. And with the exception of putting Velma to be dismembered by a chainsaw, by the lumber mill. I mean, most of the villains, it's like no one ever pulled a gun. No one ever, did anything really brutal. So in a way, you kind of lag it in your head that it's like these villains aren't aren't so scary. But if they had done one or two things, they could have been as bad as anybody, all of them. So, but I just think there was like the safety on the trigger of that gun in the original cartoons. It's hard to compare, but I feel like Pericles ranks pretty much up there. I personally, when Cassidy died, I was feeling that. So
The venom in the spine was pretty diabolical, I gotta say. Like, that was, somebody had to think about that to write that.
yeah.
Not sure what that says about them. Mark, how would you rank Pericles as a villain?
So I kind of agree with Joel and Trevor. I feel like in the series, um, as a whole, he was a 10 of 10. Because I mean, this is something that could kind of be a thing. It's like, I mean, we've had movies about, birds before. And so, I think with, him being very smart and very intellectual and things, and he, he knew things that others didn't. Like, clearly he's hiding everything and making people work for things that are not theirs. Um, but in comparison to like generic Scooby-Doo or, some of the other series that have come before that, I think there's other villains that are, situations that are scary and more, thought out. But as far as him as in himself, very, very vengeful towards everyone.
Yeah, he definitely had some kind of issue at some point with somebody. I don't know, maybe all those years locked away in a straitjacket in solitary confinement, like, just hardened him so much that he needed revenge. What were your thoughts on when he turned into, was he considered the evil entity? When he looked like part Pericles, part octopus.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on that, Joel?
I'm just assuming the evil entity just consumed him and just kind of, like you said, just made a cross between the parrot and the octopus. All that stuff kind of reminded me of the movie Scoob too, just where it got really weird. That's where I kind of tuned out. And that's where I kind of tuned out Mr. Ink when we kind of lost Professor Pericles and it just became the evil entity. I kind of just, it lost me there. So I wasn't a big, I see why they went in that direction. But it was no longer Professor Pericles, I don't think. And I just kind of lost interest in that character.
Trevor, what were your thoughts when he turned into the evil entity?
Well, I feel like it was one of those classic things where the villain's just so perfect, but just a little short-sighted, and it's like you be careful what you wish for. And that's what I felt like conceptually. He got what he wanted and it totally backfired. So I actually in that moment I think I laughed. I giggled. It's like, told you so. In my head, it's definitely the second time around. It's like, oops. Yeah, he kind of lost himself in the process of becoming, this evil, because he really thought he was smarter than this infinitely aged entity. And yeah, that little bit of ego. But that, yeah, kind of thing kind of was what made him him. If he had backed off on that at the very end, he wouldn't have been the full character. So I felt like that end kind of suited him.
Yeah. Mark, what were your thoughts on the evil entity?
I kind of agree. Like when this happened, I'm like, hey, this is a whole nother turn that wasn't quite expected. Um, I, I feel like there's more things there, probably more information that we could have got down the road with more seasons. Um, so I wish we had gotten more seasons sometimes. Disclaimer. So yeah, like, I mean, of course you'd be frightened if you saw a parrot octopus. Like that's not normal. I mean, clearly. Um, so I agree. Very concerning.
It was such a weird thing that they had this creature eating the people in the town. Because again, we don't typically see that in Scooby. It's not usually that graphic. But there he is, just eating the townspeople, and the robots are trying to kill the gang, and they blow up the mystery machine, and it's just so off from what we're used to. So the way that they wrote Pericles definitely fit the story, and then the evil entity was interesting. I don't know that I would have done part parrot, part octopus, but I can't really think of how I would have done him either if he wasn't like that, because I just feel like the parrot eating people was just not, it was almost funny. And maybe if he had huge teeth and looked more like some type of big cat or something, a lion, whatever, that he would have been a little bit more scary, or a dragon, something like that. I did wonder, because originally, before Pericles was like, forget the dog, take me instead, Scooby was supposed to become the evil entity. I wonder what he would have looked like.
Mm.
Would they have done part Scooby, part octopus with him? Did they even get that far to think about what he would have been like? Or did they just write that, no, we're not messing with Scooby. We're going to keep him the way he is, because people will be pissed if we do something like that to him.
I think they would have gone like octopus, half octopus, because it was like, seemed like a nod to H.P. Lovecraft with Cthulhu,
Oh yeah.
conical stuff, and
Yeah,
this beyond stuff, beyond Outer Realms. That's what I kind of interpreted it as.
yeah, that's a good point. So the planispheric disk, anyone that came into contact with it, they were basically put under a spell and were no longer themselves. Do you think Professor Pericles would have tried to destroy the world even if he hadn't been under the spell? Do you think he was destined to be evil? Joel?
I don't think he was destined to be evil. I think he was like Scooby, just this innocent parrot. And things happened where it just turned on him, like put under the spell, manipulated by the mayor. And also, I know parrots in real life, if they don't have like a social life, they go crazy. So I think that was just went even further with, and parrots have like a long life expectancy too. They live 100 years. So when he's put in the straitjacket, put away, I think that just went him mad too. It's just all these factors layered on top of each other that didn't work out for the poor bird.
Trevor, do you think he was destined to be evil?
Well, no, but I'm gonna pull out the theory that I've been waiting to share. So he was commenting to the gang that he was already 80, I think, at the time when he met them, or maybe 80 when he met Miss Gluck. But since he is an African parrot, and if you look online, Germany in World War I and such had a presence in East Africa, and he has this accent. So I wonder if he's one of the early Nazi party person's pets, that he might have been manipulated genetically or through a study or by some weird magic, because at the time the Hitler people were looking all over the world. I mean, conspiracy theory or no, they were like looking into weird places for things that they could get power from, whether or not it would have worked. So I kind of my kind of backstory for him, I feel like he ended up in Europe from Africa, taken to Germany, but Bavaria, because he was picked up by some of the Nazi wannabes. So I think there was that angle that there might have been some evil there waiting to happen. So again, that's just me being silly, but
No, it's an interesting theory.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. Mark, do you think Professor Pericles was just destined to be evil?
I'm kind of on the same train as Joel. Like, I don't feel like he was. I mean, and I don't feel like any animal is born into that, you know. But I could see where he possibly could have had an owner that may have trained him to be this way. Maybe they taught him a certain way, and maybe he wasn't around normal humans. You know, I mean, there's a lot we don't know of backstory and exactly how he came to be. Um, so I don't think so, but there's also a possibility.
I'm going to change your minds. So he said when he was a hatchling that the screams of fear and terror from Krampus visiting bad children on cold winter's nights was soothing. So as a hatchling, that would have been before he even knew anything about the planispheric discs. To me, I think he was destined for evil. I think he was like, as a hatchling, he knew that eventually he was going to take over the world. I think because of his intelligence, he felt like he was more powerful than other people. He felt like he could do whatever he wanted. And I think it was just a matter of time before he snapped and he took over. So I do think that he was destined to be evil. Does that change your mind that he said that? Or do you think that was just the power of the disc?
I forgot about that part, but when you said that, I remembered. So that's very possible. If he had fears and screams and things.
Joel, does
Well,
that change your mind?
It's a good argument. It doesn't change my mind. I think it's the power of the disc. Because how many years had passed since he was a hatchling? 80 plus.
Yeah.
So he could have just remembered falsely back, because that's a lot of time to pass. But no, it's a good argument. And but you also don't like birds, so I mean you're getting against them.
It's true. It's very true. Trevor, did that change your mind at all?
well, I mean, it almost dovetails into what, if there was the Anunnaki influence about his existence at all, and then he was being raised by Nazi people. I mean, it kind of dovetails my theory pretty well, actually. I mean, to wonder about how he got with her, Andrew, and how all that came to be where he ended up. It's just like that for the show having answered a lot of questions, they left that really vague. So I would like to know.
Yeah. So what are your final thoughts on Professor Pericles? Joel?
Yeah, I like the bird. I'd like to have like love this would have seen a third season, or maybe so much time has passed they could do a direct to DVD movie or something, or even a prequel with the Mr. Inc. would be kind of cool, because they could kind of keep Scooby out of it and just do their own thing, and kind of maybe I thought, how they have the different lineages of Mystery Inc. and like they showed over the years with different mascots. I just thought that was cool. But were all the mascots destined to be evil? Like, because we're talking about how Pericles was evil, but Scooby would have been the one to have, it was his turn with the planets aligned. Like, just to go with your theory of the bird being evil, born evil, it's like when all these mascots they had were destined to be evil, like including Scooby. That's my final thought.
I don't think that Scooby was destined to be evil. Like on his own. I don't think he was destined to be evil. had the evil entity taken him over, that would have been different, but on his own, I don't think he would have. Whereas Professor Pericles, I think on his own, was destined to be evil without even ever coming into contact with the discs. Yeah. Trevor, final thoughts?
Well, the one thing I was gonna that you might have when the reset happened, I want to call foul, so to speak. FOWL. If the reset happened and all the Anunnaki animal lines are cleansed to be decent good, there's no reason that Pericles would have ever left Germany. I don't think he would have ended up with Mystery Inc. number one. It's like if things are totally cleansed, I have a feeling that he would never, steps would never put him in that path. But that's just me. I don't know, like if he was completely good. And that when, you know, at the end where it has him happy with Ricky, you know, I mean, it's the ending kids want, and I personally, as a happy adult, would want. But I was just like, wait a minute, if it reset and undid things, you know, his story wouldn't have been the same. So
Yeah, I hated the ending of Mystery Inc.
well,
I mean, it
oh,
would have
okay.
been fine if they ended it and then they had another series or season.
Well, in theory, it's my take that it dovetailed into Where Are You? Even though there were things in that museum that indicated that Where Are You had happened, in my mind, Where Are You? Because they were thoroughly happy together and then setting off on the path of adventure, and that's when they were started. So it would have been for me, if I had a third season, I would have done a redefine of the Where Are You model, you know, just them cruising around America and helping people out and solving, you know, the mysteries without, you know, the magic.
Another interesting theory. All right. Mark, what are your final thoughts?
So I have to say, you know, all in all, great character. I enjoyed you know, his part in the series. And you know, like I think wish we could have learned more over time. Of course, I always want more Scooby-Doo, so that doesn't change anything. Um, so, but you know, I didn't like him. He is one of the villains, so that's normal. Because I'm true to the gang, always will be. So, you know, he very different and very different from anything we had saw before.
Yeah, I think the whole series was different than what we've seen before. Definitely a much darker tone, so it made sense that Pericles and the other villains were darker. I didn't like Pericles, but I don't think we were supposed to like Pericles. I think he was written so that you wouldn't like him, and they did their job. They made me not like him. Joel likes bad characters, I guess. So, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. But I still stick to, I think that Pericles was destined to be evil from the day that he was born. And we will never know unless they do a spin-off and give us a spin-off of the original Mystery Inc. gang and give us more information. I'm sure there's more stuff that he's lived through that, you know, they could have put in there and we would have gotten more background on him and found out that he was just a bad bird. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, are you sure that's just not your anti-bird showing? Right.
It's very possible that it's my anti-bird showing. Now, there are some birds that I like. I like penguins, but yeah, most birds I'm not real fond of.
So that ending did bother you because he was good in the end, and it cleansed the history. He never was a villain on the reset. So you're just denying the ending?
Well, they also were in a different timeline, right?
Right,
So
right.
being in a
But
different
it was my
timeline doesn't mean that
yeah.
nothing happened. It just means that they
Well,
went to a different timeline. It didn't erase history or what happened. They moved to a different timeline. In that timeline, he
no.
happened to be
Well,
good.
but oh my goodness, this is going into time-space theory. In my view, it's like if, like in Back to the Future, it's like you change and change and change. When you finally change it back, it becomes the one way, you know. So it kind of erases. Though Harlan Ellison did say, it's like, usually it's like I'm aware of all these. This one kind of slid past me, but you kids, pretty sharp. And that's what I say when he said he would want him in college with him the next semester. So
Yeah. Yeah. So to me, another season could have been done. I mean, they very easily led into a new season.
yeah, I was hoping.
Before we get off track, we're going to wrap things up. Before we do, let everyone know where they can find you on social media. Joel, we'll start with you.
You can find me on YouTube. Just type in Planet Scooby.
Trevor?
Instagram, Funky Philosophy Fridays, and all the sounds are F's. So
Mark?
You can find me on Facebook with Scooby and Mark.
And you can find all my links on ScoobyAddicts.com. Let us know your thoughts on Professor Pericles, and thank you for joining us for another Scooby Panel. Thank you for tuning in to another Scooby Panel. I'm Nikki Blake from ScoobyAddicts.com. If you like these panels, please subscribe to my channel for more great discussions. A huge shout out to our patrons, Julie Rosen, Ross from ScoobyFan.net, Tagus, Elizabeth Maloney, Garrett Spencer, and Paul the Scooby Dude. If you would like to support the Scooby Panel, please go to patreon.com/ScoobyAddicts. A very special thank you to Joel from Planet Scooby, pop artist Trevor Hawkins, and Mark Morrison from Scooby Doo and Mark. Scooby Panel is available in podcast form on most podcast platforms, or as a web series on YouTube. You can find Scooby Panel on Instagram, Facebook, and X as @ScoobyPanel. We are part of the Collector's Maze Network, where you can find all things geek. Scooby and Shaggy were voiced by Scott Innes. Check out Scott's website, onescottshop.com. Scooby Addicts artwork by Will Davenport. Scooby Panel logo by Garrett Spencer. Video editing by Nikki Blake. Music composed and performed by Bovine Nightmares. Please join us next time for another Scooby Panel.